Hey, and welcome back to a Witch Alone's podcast. I'm your hostess Danielle, and we'll be discussing the Wiccan practice of the year and a day. Traditionally, if someone wanted to become a practicing Wiccan, they would be required to complete the 366 days of training before being initiated into the craft by an elder, most likely into a coven. These days, training for year and a day isn't something a lot of new witches or Wiccans do unless they know an elder or have family or friends that are already in a coven. So many people discover the path via social media or coming across a book, and a lot of the time their living situation doesn't allow for them to practice or study out in the open. Therefore, many people skip this step and go straight to practicing. I never did the year and a day training for a few reasons. Nowhere to practice, no money for resources both in books or supplies, and no friends or elders in the craft to help me on my way. 14 years ago, there wasn't much online for assistance either, so there was no access to free learning like there is today. After a few years, a job, and coming out of the broom closet, I had enough resources to go through the year and a day training, and I'm confident in saying that no matter where you are in your craft, going through such an intense amount of practice can donate a lot of invaluable information. Please note that at the time, I was still a practicing Wiccan, and so that was how I studied. Going through this practice helps you to connect to the path and get into the new habit of adding magic and seeing magic in your everyday life. I can't seem to find any precise history on why Wiccans practice for 366 days before initiation, but my theory is based in the myth of Ceridwen and her cauldron that we talked about a few episodes back. There are so many resources nowadays for young Wiccans, and it can now be a little overwhelming as well. Where do you start? Who do you trust? What path do you take? My suggestion is to pick up the book Wicca, A Year and a Day by Timothy Roderick. He gives you something to do for every day to help you get into the groove. He also indicates that if you can't go through the book every day, that's okay. Take it one page at a time, and if that means it takes you 370, 400, or 500 days, it's fine. While it is suggested, unless you're aiming to join a coven that requires the 366 days of practice, realistically, if you were to be practicing solely on your own, there is no one stopping you from skipping this, but it really is very helpful to shift your everyday thinking. Even now, as someone who doesn't practice Wicca the religion, I have gone back through Timothy Roderick's book about the year and a day practice. I personally still think it is a great resource for figuring out how to add a little bit of magic and intention into every day. These books also have rituals involving the 8 Sabbats, which is extra handy for someone just starting out. He actually has 2 books, with the sequel being Another Year and a Day, which moves beyond the basics and gives you another 366 days of learning to help you dive deeper into your spiritual practice. If you're not a practicing Wiccan, you can still read it for some good ideas. Maybe he suggests something you've never thought of, or something that you'd put into a ritual. I know I've read countless books on Wicca and witchcraft and still find inspiration for my own pathway in several different books. Unfortunately, this brings us to the end of a relatively short episode. Make sure to subscribe for new episodes and updates, and leave a review if you can. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and newly to YouTube with subtitles for the hearing impaired. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, swing by my page under the same handle, A Witch Alone, and if you follow, make sure you say hi. I love meeting new followers. Next episode, we will be starting the mini-series on basic practices, beginning with consecrating your tools. Until next time, blessings.